Episode 7 from Season 4 changes everything we thought we knew about Fromville. The monsters are no longer just hunters in the dark. Something has started to connect back. And at the center of it all is Fatima, a bond, and a terrifying shift no one saw coming. Episode 7 doesn't just continue the story of Fromville. It fundamentally changes the rules of it. What begins as another desperate attempt by the residents to survive the night slowly transforms into something far more unsettling. Because for the first time in the series, the monsters are no longer operating as distant, unreachable predators. Something has shifted, something has connected, and at the center of that connection is Fatima. For most of the season, Fatima has been drifting in the background of chaos, carrying a burden no one else in Fromville can truly understand. Ever since the horrifying events surrounding Smiley's rebirth through her, she has existed in a state between trauma and uncertainty. To everyone around her, she appears fragile, unstable, and overwhelmed by something far beyond human comprehension. But Episode 7 quietly suggests something different. What Fatima is experiencing may not be simple psychological breakdown. It may be something active, something still alive within the system of Fromville itself. The first real sign that something is wrong with the established order comes during Boyd's attempt to test the limits of the settlement weapons. After discovering that certain entities within the settlement can be destroyed, hope briefly returns to the group. For a moment, it feels like they may have finally found a weakness in Fromville's ecosystem, a way to push back against the night for the first time. But that hope collapses almost immediately when Kenny is sent into direct contact with one of the original monsters. The attack changes everything. When Kenny strikes, there is no reaction, no injury, no weakness, no sign that the creature can even be harmed. Instead, the monster responds with something far more disturbing than aggression. It responds with calm, with confidence, with something almost resembling amusement, as if the outcome was already known, as if the attempt itself was irrelevant long before it even began. That moment confirms something critical about Fromville. Not everything inside it follows the same rules. The settlement entities, the resurrected forms, the experimental manifestations, they may be vulnerable, they may be destroyed. But the original monsters exist on an entirely different layer of reality. A layer that does not respond to human logic, human tools, or human expectations. And if that is true, then Boyd's plan was never going to succeed in the first place. Everything collapses quickly after that realization. Kenny is forced into retreat, but there is no real safety anywhere. The environment itself begins to feel like it is closing in. The monsters are not moving randomly anymore. They are positioned too precisely, too deliberately, as if they are not just hunting, but responding to something deeper. Something that allows them to anticipate human movement before it even happens. It feels coordinated, predictive, almost like the town itself is feeding them information. Kenny barely makes it to the bus, holding on to survival by seconds, but even that moment of safety does not last. Smiley arrives. And this is where everything fractures. Inside Colony House, Fatima suddenly experiences something she cannot explain in any normal human way. At first, it feels like pressure building inside her mind, a pulling sensation, as if her awareness is being dragged somewhere else. Then it sharpens, it focuses, and suddenly her perception no longer belongs entirely to her. She is seeing something else, not imagining it, not remembering it, experiencing it. She is seeing through Smiley. For a brief moment, the boundary between human consciousness and monster perception collapses completely. Fatima is no longer observing Smiley from the outside. She is inside his awareness, looking out through his senses, experiencing the world as he experiences it. And then, something happens that should not be possible. Smiley hesitates. In a world where the monsters move with perfect instinctive precision, hesitation is unnatural. It is not part of their behavior. It breaks their pattern. It interrupts their certainty. That hesitation lasts only a few seconds, but in Fromville, a few seconds is enough to decide everything. Kenny survives, but survival is not the real event. The real event is the connection. Because what Fatima experiences is not coincidence, hallucination, or trauma response. It is alignment. a shared channel between two minds that were never supposed to overlap in the first place. And once that connection becomes visible, it cannot be ignored. Everything about Fatima's story suddenly shifts in meaning. Her isolation, her emotional instability, her growing detachment from others, all of it begins to look different in hindsight. Even her fixation on the strange mud figure she has been secretly shaping takes on new significance. The mud totem was never just an object. It was never just a coping mechanism or emotional release. It carries something deeper, something tied to memory, belief, and intention. Fatima has been constructing a form, a structure, a focus point. Something inspired by the stories her father once told her about clay beings shaped to protect, to obey, to serve as guardians between worlds. Stories that once seemed like folklore now begin to feel strangely relevant in a place like Fromville, where belief and perception do not behave like ordinary mental processes. They shape reality in subtle, unpredictable ways. And the more Fatima works on the totem, the more unstable yet precise her connection becomes. It begins to feel as if she is not simply shaping mud, she is shaping focus. Not creating power from nothing, but giving structure to something already inside her that she does not fully understand. A frequency she is slowly learning how to access. A connection she did not choose but is beginning to control in fragments. The terrifying implication is that the mud totem is not the source of the connection at all. It is the stabilizer, the anchor that prevents Fatima from losing herself completely when she slips into Smiley's perception. Without it, the connection would likely be chaotic, overwhelming, possibly even destructive. But with it, she can focus, direct, experience, interact, which leads to a question that becomes impossible to ignore. If she can access it once, can she do it again? While this internal transformation unfolds, the external world of Fromville becomes even more unstable. The monsters are not simply reacting anymore, they are adapting, repositioning, adjusting. The environment itself begins to feel less like a hunted space and more like a controlled system. And at the center of this growing instability is a disturbing realization. The residents are no longer just being attacked, they are being observed. Every failed strategy, every movement, every attempt at resistance seems anticipated in advance, as if something within the town is feeding information to something else, something watching from deeper inside the system. This is where the conflict shifts from physical survival to psychological warfare. Because survival in Fromville is no longer just about escaping monsters. It is about understanding what is watching and what is learning. The resurrection of Roger's corpse later in the episode reinforces this evolution. Death is no longer an ending. It is a transition. A tool used to spread fear, disrupt stability, and turn familiarity into horror. Even the dead become part of the system of control. But Fatima's moment with Smiley stands apart from all of it. It is not fear, it is not manipulation, it is interference. For the first time in the series, a human does not simply react to a monster. A human disrupts one. That single disruption suggests a new shift in Fromville's power structure. Not destruction, not escape, but influence. However, influence always carries a cost. Because if Fatima can reach Smiley, then Smiley can likely reach her as well. The same connection that allows her to see through him may also allow him to see through her. The boundary that has been crossed does not open in only one direction. It opens both. And that creates a far more disturbing possibility than control. Blurring. The gradual erosion of separation between human thought and monster instinct. Not possession in the traditional sense, but overlap, shared perception becoming shared identity. Awareness beginning to bleed across boundaries that were never meant to be crossed. Fatima may not be controlling Smiley, she may be entering the system that defines him. And once inside that system, there is no guarantee of return. Meanwhile, the larger forces behind Fromville continue their own progression. Chaos itself is being used as strategy. Fear is being engineered. Uncertainty is being weaponized. The goal is not simply destruction. It is destabilization of perception itself. Because in Fromville, confusion is more effective than violence. A frightened mind breaks faster than a dead body. And a divided group cannot survive long enough to resist. This makes Fatima's emerging ability both powerful and dangerous. If she learns to stabilize it, she could become something unprecedented, a bridge into the monsters, awareness, a way to disrupt them from within their own perception. But if she cannot control it, she becomes something else entirely, a point of access, a vulnerability, a channel through which the monsters might also reach into human minds. The episode does not end with answers. It ends with expansion. The rules of Fromville are not clarified, they are complicated further. Every answer creates another question. Every discovery reveals another layer beneath it. And at the center of it all stands Fatima, on the edge of something no one in Fromville has ever touched before. A connection between hunter and hunted, between human and monster, between awareness and something that does not fully belong to either side. And as that boundary begins to disappear, one truth becomes unavoidable. In Fromville, the most dangerous thing is not what is outside the door. It is what happens when the door no longer separates anything at all. Because once that boundary is gone, survival is no longer about escaping the night. It becomes about surviving what you are becoming inside it.